Good evening. This is BBC Newsline, the top stories this evening. The Ulster Farmers Union has called for the Agriculture Minister to resign, but he says he's not going anywhere.
I understand the Ulster Farmers Union's concerns. We've commissioned an independent external review. Deeply disappointed they're jumping ahead of that and making their own conclusions.
The head of the Law Society backs his chief executive but admits mistakes have been made.
I regret that I have to say we got it wrong. We did get it wrong, and we need to look at it and find out what we did wrong.
50 years on, the impact of the Peace People is still felt across Northern Ireland. We've been to a special summer scheme helping children with severe learning difficulties and their families.
In sport, Commonwealth gold medalist Kate O'Connor is off to a flying start at the European Championships as Irish athletics continues a record-breaking run.
And the heavy, humid air has moved away and it will be fresher this weekend. There's also a lot of dry weather to come. I'll have all the details later.
Hello everyone, I'm Declan Harvey. There is a row in the farming world tonight, a showdown of sorts, between Northern Ireland's biggest farmers' organisation and the Minister for Agriculture. The Ulster Farmers Union want Andrew Muir to resign. He said the days of the UFU dictating government policy are over. This all began when a court ordered that 51 cows be culled in County Tyrone, but it's the way that department officials shot the animals dead in a field that has made this such a controversy. Our agriculture and environment correspondent Louise Cullen reports.
These scenes near 5 Mile Town seem to have lit something of a touch paper to discontent that was already brewing in the farming community. And the Minister and his officials were left in no doubt about how that community was feeling when they appeared at the committee in Stormont on Monday. Hundreds gathered outside to protest. Their union has extended a vote of no confidence in the department to include the Minister, the Permanent Secretary and the Chief Vet.
I have never heard a level of disquiet amongst our farming members than I've heard over the last few weeks. In some ways it seems somehow disproportionate to what happened in 5 Mile Town. This is a history of farmers feeling that they are being victimised by the government department which has authority over them, and them being asked to adhere to a set of rules that the department itself does not seem capable of abiding by itself.
A review into the events in 5 Mile Town will be carried out by a former Chief Vet for Ireland. The UFU says more people should be involved. The Minister says it needs to be quick.
Look, the Ulster Farmers Union can pass all the motions they want. I've got a job of work to do within the department. Has anyone seen the situation in regards to Lough Neagh? There's blue-green algae there. I have to address those issues. I understand the Ulster Farmers Union's concerns. We've commissioned an independent external review. Deeply disappointed they're jumping ahead of that and making their own conclusions without allowing it to report. We need to follow due process in regards to this issue. I will continue to engage with farmers, did it all this week, and will continue to do it in the weeks and months ahead.
When the details of the cull in 5 Mile Town began to emerge, there was considerable public reaction, particularly online. There are now 6 individual death threats made online that are being investigated, along with 1 incident of assault. Naming civil servants as part of the vote of no confidence has worried their representatives.
It's really important for everyone to remember officials serve ministers, and ministers who are democratically elected, they serve the public, and officials have no right of public reply, and we cannot go down the slippery slope of starting to hold officials accountable, because ultimately all that will do is undermine the impartiality of the civil service, and that cannot be allowed to happen.
A tumultuous few weeks for Dara could turn into a bumpy road ahead. Louise Cullen, BBC Newsline.
Police say they're investigating an attack on a house in Ardoyne in North Belfast on Wednesday night as a racially motivated hate crime. A brick had been used to break windows of the house in Jamaica Street. Paint was also thrown at the property. The house was unoccupied at the time, but it's understood a family from Sudan had been living there. The head of the Law Society has publicly backed the organisation's beleaguered chief executive, who has been facing repeated calls to resign. David Lavery's position is being called into question by some after it emerged he wrote a supportive reference for a convicted paedophile, encouraging a judge to give a more lenient sentence. David Lavery himself has called it an error of judgment, but the elected head of the Law Society now says he still has confidence in Mr. Lavery. He did accept, though, that they've handled this situation badly. Eve Rosato has this report.
We're crushed.
Sex abuse survivor and campaigner Julianne Boyle's reaction to what might now be called a crisis for the Law Society. This all began when early in 2026, their chief executive, David Lavery, sat down to write a character reference for his cousin, who was by then a convicted paedophile. That character reference was to be used in court to help William Lloyd Lavery gain a more lenient sentence. David Lavery apologised last week, and he and the Law Society might have hoped that would be an end to the incident. But the resignation of a senior member of the council, letters of concern from 50 solicitors and complaints from victims' groups mean today the President is finally speaking publicly.
We are absolutely willing to look at how we handle this. I'm quite happy to say we got this. Well, I'm not happy to say. I regret that I have to say we got it wrong. We did get it wrong, and we need to look at it and find out what we did wrong and why we did it wrong and what procedures we put in place to make sure we don't get it wrong again.
Julianne's also an advocate for other victims and survivors of sexual crimes. She knows the criminal justice system well, and she has strong opinions on what's gone on here.
The damage that has been done is unrepairable to the victims and survivors. We've no faith in them no more. The Law Society has just, they've closed walls, became a unit, and they're not listening or hearing us. And we want, if David Lavery has any empathy towards the victims that he has hurt, he will resign, and he should resign from his post.
Julianne is echoing the feelings of someone for whom this is a very personal story. Nicola Bannon, who was just a child when she was sexually abused by William Lloyd Lavery.
This was an ethical issue, and it comes down to judgment, good judgment, that the head or the CEO of a law society can make a character reference for a convicted paedophile who is his cousin, who has shown absolutely no remorse. His position, I kind of feel it's a conflict of interests. How can we have trust and confidence in the Law Society if he remains as CEO?
The Law Society will hold a relatively rare special meeting in the coming weeks, but this has all the hallmarks of a story that's not going away. Eve Rosato, BBC Newsline.
Now, 50 years ago this month, Northern Ireland had been in the grip of the Troubles for 7 violent years, and all too many families had been affected. In the hope of saving others from that pain, a group of women began a groundbreaking campaign. They would become known as the Peace People. Out of their individual tragedies, they would mobilise thousands of others and eventually be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The women didn't succeed in ending the violence back then, but they bravely spoke out at a dangerous time. Our correspondent, Mark Simpson, has been looking back.
To try to stop the violence in 1976, these women tried people power.
You'll never get a future from anybody down the barrel of a gun.
Catholics are afraid to trust Protestants, the suspicion and the fear and the hatred, and it's been built up and up and up. And what we hope is to try to knock it down and down and down.
Hello, Peace People.
The organisation from the 1970s still exists. 50 years on, there's respect and regret.
I honestly thought that this was so seismic, this was going to stop the violence. But history shows us that it didn't. Now, the one thing that it did do, the Peace People reduced the violence at the time by 70%. The Peace People flattened the curve, you know, and at that point we were heading towards an all-out civil war on this island, I have no doubt about that.
Jerry is an uncle of the 3 young children whose deaths started the Peace People. The three Maguire children were hit by a car driven by an IRA man. He was shot by the army and the car careered off the road.
They didn't deserve this.
Mairead Corrigan, an aunt of the children, formed the Peace People along with Betty Williams and Kieran McKeown. The two women won the 1976 Nobel Peace Prize.
I call upon you, Mairead Corrigan and Betty Williams.
5 decades later, their work is remembered on the walls of the headquarters of the Peace People in Belfast. Of the three founders, only Mairead is still alive. Although they didn't end the violence in the 1970s, many believe they laid the foundations for the peace process.
Peace was a gift to all of us, and people must respect the lives that were lost was the price that was paid for this peace. So we must hold on to that at all costs.
I know last week you went down to the centre of Belfast to see the Fleadh. What were your thoughts when you looked at what was happening?
These were the streets where people used to die in, and now all of a sudden they were dancing in the streets. And actually, I cried tears of joy. It was magnificent.
There has been huge progress, but the Peace People say 50 years later their work goes on. Mark Simpson, BBC Newsline.
Next, local councillors have said they aren't paid enough, and as a result, it's difficult to attract younger people into politics. They've compared their basic allowance of £18,000 a year to the £67,000 MLAs get at Stormont following a pay rise earlier this year. The story from our politics reporter Brendan Hughes.
Stormont ministers this week at a hospital warning once again our finances aren't so healthy.
It's about fairness and the recognition by the British government that are being unfair to the people who live here.
We believe there is a systemic flaw in the formula by which we are funded.
No such flaw, it seems, when MLAs got a pay rise in April. For councillors, though, a different treatment. MLAs were awarded a mere 27% pay rise by an independent panel. But when a review recommended a similar increase for councillors last year, Stormont ministers rejected that, saying it was unaffordable. Instead, they gave councillors a 5% uplift. Now it's emerged a body representing councillors here has written to the Communities Minister raising concerns. In their letter, the National Association of Councillors in Northern Ireland says current arrangements fall short and show a significant disparity, and they warn potentially local government will not be as effective unless things change. For some, it's not just about pay.
The pay was the headline, but it was also about conditions. I just can't understand why an independent report for one set of elected members is not accepted, and yet no other independent report is.
I think that better pay would absolutely increase the number of women in politics. We need our councillors to look like we look, as diverse as we are. And so anything that will remove those barriers, and pay is a big one of that, I would be very much in favour of.
Others warn of double standards.
Excessive pay raises given to politicians are a slap in the face to workers right across the board who never see any such offer come from their employer.
I think it's very telling that one of the only things they could agree on in Stormont recently was their own pay.
The Department for Communities says the Minister is still considering the points raised, but with elections next year, don't expect a change of tune. Brendan Hughes, BBC Newsline.
Footage of a puffling, which is a baby puffin, bred off the County Down coast, has been captured for the first time. There are now around 30 breeding pairs on the Copeland Islands. Last month, trail cameras filmed a young puffling out of its burrow and an adult puffin bringing fish back to feed it. It comes as populations across the UK have dropped by a quarter in the last 25 years.
They're such important regulators of the ecosystem in terms of, keeping fish stocks under control, but also fertilising the land as well. And of course, people just love puffins, and people get such a buzz out of seeing all these birds. And I think that's such an important thing for our mental health. And it's important to connect us to nature and to understand that we need to protect nature as a whole.
A special summer scheme for children with severe learning disabilities has been described as a lifeline. The week-long programme in Lisburn was set up after schemes in special schools were put in doubt earlier in the year. Our education correspondent Robbie Meredith has been to see.
It's a special scheme with special sensory activities for the special young people who attend.
A lot of the attendees are wheelchair users. They would have epilepsy or diabetes. They would require tube feeds. They would be non-verbal and would need all of their personal care needs met.
Karen's own daughter Emily is one. She helped set it up after summer schemes in special schools had been thrown into uncertainty due to concerns about the availability of nursing staff.
When that was announced, that was quite a source of stress, obviously, in our household. And then actually to find out that this was taking place this week was really quite a lifeline.
Rebecca says it makes a real difference to her daughter, Elsie.
It is so important for our children to be seen in this environment that is social and also sensory-based, and just the fact that there's something for her.
Lisburn and Castlereagh Council help fund the scheme run by the Sensibility charity. Parents come with their children, which brings peace of mind.
Actually, staying here and just taking time for myself has really helped me. I left yesterday feeling a lot lighter than I came in.
I've seen a huge difference in Alfie's behaviour, he's joyful this week. He's not distressed, he's not upset. He's so happy to come here and spend time with the other children and have fun, as he should be able to in the summertime.
It all ended today with a special lunch for everyone. The aim now is to make it an annual fixture. Robbie Meredith, BBC Newsline.
Now, you'll likely know this man's face. Kieran McMenamin is one of Northern Ireland's most recognisable actors, most recently starring in the BBC's Hope Street. But now, the Fermanagh man has turned his hand to writing. His first novel, Skintown, is set in his native Enniskillen, and it's already been adapted into a film, which is set to receive its world premiere in Edinburgh this weekend. Bernie Allen has been speaking to him.
So you've got your wee shadow with you. What's the crack, Jonty?
A comedy drama following best friends Vinny and Jonty.
They're absolute bangers. 25, but you know what? Three lovely girls, we'd call it 20.
In the 1990s in Enniskillen.
Good evening. Evening, Laura.
Skintown is a movie adaptation of actor Kieran McMenamin's first book. He's a native of Enniskillen and says whilst the story is completely made up, it is based on some of his own personal experiences.
When I started, I sat down to write a short story about an incident that happened to me when I was 17, when I went for a scary journey in a car with a couple of ne'er-do-wells in Fermanagh, and it turned into a scary thing, turned into a very funny thing. And then when I started writing it, I found the voice of this smart teenager in the middle of the Troubles who had no idea why he'd been born there and just wanted to be anywhere else in the world like any other teenager.
After a quarter of a century, the IRA has announced a ceasefire of what it calls its armed struggle to remove the British presence in Northern Ireland.
Asked if Skintown is similar to Derry Girls, Kieran acknowledges there are some similarities in style.
Skintown was published in 2017. I don't know if there's a lot of comparisons to Derry Girls. There's a lot of the humour is the same, and if we've landed anything half as well as Lisa, we'll be over the moon. And we've got obviously some Derry Girls in it, which is amazing. Jamie Lee O'Donnell's in there. Tara Lynn, who plays the mum in Derry Girls, is in there. But the comparisons kind of stop there. So it's the same era, and it's some of the humour will definitely be the same tone because that's our sense of humour.
It's over?
25 years of car bombing doesn't end just like that.
The film's due to premiere at the Edinburgh Festival this weekend, and Kieran says he's proud to be the person bringing Fermanagh to the big screen. Bernie Allen, BBC Newsline.
All right, Nicholas here with the Sport Next and a record-breaking run in Irish athletics.
Yeah, absolutely, Declan. What a hugely successful few weeks it has been, and potentially more to come. Good evening, everyone. Commonwealth heptathlon champion Kate O'Connor is continuing her brilliant form this summer. She's aiming to add the European title to her Glasgow gold and is off to a perfect start. The 25-year-old set personal bests in the hurdles and then the high jump to move into contention. She's second after two events and back in action this evening. There's live coverage from 7 o'clock on BBC 2. Now, last night, Donegal's Mark English became the first man to win a gold medal for Ireland at the European Championships after a brilliant performance in the 800 metres. English moved into the lead inside the final 100 metres and pulled clear of the field. He adds gold to his bronze medals from 2014 in Zurich and 4 years ago in Munich. And Rashida Adeleke surged to a silver medal in the women's 200 metres to wrap up a special evening for Irish athletics.
A national record. I can't believe it. I just can't. If you knew what my journey looked like and where I was at this year, I would have never. I barely made it here. I literally made it here on the last day. I qualified at nationals, and now I'm here, and now I won a medal. I just can't believe it.
Like, I've been trying for a lifetime to try get a title, so it's just relief, I think. It was a relief actually in 2014 when I got my first medal, and relief today, so it's amazing. I've never been in a stadium with had such brilliant Irish support. I don't know if we'll ever get a chance just this close to home again, so it's amazing, and I really wanted to take home the gold medal. I didn't want to take home any medals, so yeah, as I said, it's a big relief.
Now to local football, and the big clash in the Irish Premiership this weekend sees Glentoran travel to Belfast rivals Linfield, with many tipping Larne and Coleraine for success this season. Glen's manager Declan Devine is still expecting his side to be right in the mix this campaign.
I'm certainly not shying away from it. I need to put silverware in the cabinet this year. Nobody has told me that, but I'm in the game long enough to understand that the game moves on very quickly, and I'm big enough to understand that the expectation at this football club now must be to be competing on a regular basis for silverware. I'm happy with that. I want the club to have those expectations, and I believe that we have a squad of players here when everybody's right and everybody's fit, and we have a full panel to pick from, that we can compete with anyone.
Now, it's been a turbulent week at Derry City with all the speculation over the future of James McLean. New boss Mark Connolly will be hoping the club make positive headlines on the field of play this evening when they travel to UCD in the FAI Cup. For many, it's a must-win game to keep their season alive. Kieran Turish reports.
It's been a challenging week for interim Derry City boss Mark Connolly, but he's now solely concentrating on the football and the important third-round FAI Cup tie away to UCD this evening. This week has been dominated by speculation over James McLean's future. One former Brandywell favourite who won 2 league titles here says valuable lessons must be learned.
Just going from one disaster to another, from the start of the season, you know, from performances, results, and you know the last thing you want is all your dirty laundry aired in public, you know. And I think it's just brought everything into focus. Maybe what's wrong with the club at the minute, you know. I think there's just no real leadership.
Mark Connolly clearly wants the focus to be back on the field of play after the departure of Tiernan Lynch. And the speculation over the future of James McLean, he sees his role as steadying the ship. And he'll want to build on that momentum of his opening win against Sligo Rovers, with a victory in the Cup against UCD. Kieran Turish, BBC Newsline, Dungiven.
Now, Northern Ireland could have a new British motorcycling champion this year. David Allingham currently leads the Superstock Series after an impressive start to the season. He's back in BSB action at Thruxton this weekend. It's certainly a dramatic turnaround in fortunes for the Eglinton rider after considering quitting the sport 2 years ago. Stephen Watson has more.
Winning has become a habit for David Allingham in 2026. But it wasn't always this way. After a crash filled him full of self-doubt.
I just came home to my fiancée Megan, and I says to her, you know, I just don't even know if I want to do this anymore. Like, 29 years age, my body is hurting, you know. And I says to Megan, I don't know if I want to keep doing this, and I haven't got it. And she nearly told me off, you know. She says, you have got it, and you need to start believing in yourself, you know. And she says that the champagne will taste even sweeter when we won.
And Allingham has cracked open plenty of bottles already.
The checkered flag is out. Allingham will take victory from Matt Truelove. Simon Reed is...
He's triumphed in 7 of the 9 races so far. And as well as the championship, there's another big event planned this year.
We've always wanted to obviously get married, but with racing and stuff and getting injured and getting hurt, it was never the right time. So I said there that 100% we'll get married, but my dream is to win the British Championship and then get married the week after. So,
what would it mean to you to be crowned British champion?
It would mean everything, you know, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the injuries. It would just make it all worthwhile.
And along with his Northern Ireland team, a perfect double might just be possible. Stephen Watson, BBC Newsline.
And finally, the men's and women's hockey World Cup tournaments get underway this weekend. You can follow all the action across BBC Sport. Declan.
Thank you, Nicola. I'm not wishing the summer away, I'm really not, but this is surely just an early hint that autumn is on the horizon.
They look super juicy, don't they?
They really do, yeah. Proud grower there.
We have a pear tree in our garden, and I think we're in for a bumper crop as well. Probably partly because we've had such a warm summer and that little bit of rain as well. It is cooler and fresher though this weekend. That very heavy humid air has moved away, so 1 or 2 showers around tonight, but a lot of dry weather too, and temperatures in 1 or 2 spots in the countryside could well dip briefly into single digits. So tomorrow we're looking at the better of the 2 days this weekend. Largely dry, it'll be bright, there'll be some sunshine at times. And generally speaking, I think more sunshine than we had today. Always the best of it in eastern and southern counties. Some build-up of cloud, but there will be some pleasant sunshine. Not too breezy, and temperatures not too dissimilar to today either, around about the average for this time of year. It continues dry tomorrow evening for those heading out for a Saturday night, but during the early hours we'll see some thicker cloud move in, which will bring a couple of bits and pieces of rain and slightly milder air moving in. So that's a weak weather system which won't be particularly active because there's still a lot of high pressure around, but it will bring a lot of cloud to the island of Ireland and some splashes of rain, particularly across northern and western counties. So a little bit of dampness at times on Sunday, whereas tomorrow should be more or less dry, and temperatures tomorrow on Sunday rather, not too different either. So let's look at next week, and what's shaping up is a fairly significant area of low pressure. Remember, we've had high pressure for ages. That will bring more significant rain for a time on Monday, particularly Monday night, and following it we get into a run of westerlies which will bring some sunshine but also a scattering of showers. So for your weekend summary, we're looking at Saturday being a fairly dry day, Sunday bringing a little bit of dampness. So if you're planning on spending time in the garden, Saturday's maybe the best day. Some heavier rain around on Monday, especially late in the day, and then bright and breezy with some sunshine and a few showers for much of next week.
Thank you, Cecilia. All right, go and have yourself a great weekend. Thank you for watching this evening. We'll see you on Monday as ever, 6:30. Bye-bye.